Today we're going to look at this RNAV approach, the RNP runway 08 into Exeter Airport in the PMDG 737-700 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I'll just quickly set up a couple of things and then I'll brief you as we go. So initially here I'm setting up the courses, which is final approach course of 077 for the approach, and that information can be found on the top of the plate here. And I'm going to set that on the left side and the right side, as you can see here. The next thing I'm going to set, you can see on the missed approach procedure here, there is a straight ahead to an NDB which goes into an NDB hold. So I'm going to have that set up in the ADF radio there, 337. Now let's take a look on the approach plate and compare that to the legs page to make sure that all of the waypoints match. So we're entering the procedure at Sisri here. We're going to the Tango Echo 08 India, the Tango Echo 08 Foxtrot. Then we've got 3-degree path down to the minimums, which will be 480. We've got the runway point in, and the missed approach is climb on 077 to the Echo X-ray, which we've tuned, and climbing to 2,500 feet and enter the hold. So all that looks sensible to me. The descent page, I've just basically left it as it was. The forecast page, I've put the QNH in there. You'd also normally put the descent winds in because we're pretty low anyway. I decided not to bother. And the fix page, I've given myself a 10-mile and a 4-mile ring just for a bit of situational awareness on the approach. Looking at the progress page here, you can see we've currently got 7.3 tons of fuel on board. For landing, having completed all that procedure, it looks like we're going to land with 7.1. So we have 0.2 to burn off of the fuel total, which is our estimated landing weight. So you push the init ref button here, come over to the approach ref page, and you can see the current gross weight is 59.9. So like I said, we need to take the 0.2 off for our estimated landing weight. So 59.7 goes in there, and we will use flap 40 with auto brake 3, I think, with 5 knots on top. Maybe a little bit of a tailwind on the approach. The winds are a little variable at Exeter today. And back on the approach chart here, we can see the elevation is 102 feet, and we're going to make sure that that to the nearest 100 is set in the land out on the overhead panel here. As this is an RNAV RNP approach, we do need to make sure as well that the aircraft is set up to have the required navigational performance to be able to calculate its position within 0.3 of a nautical mile. To do that, we have a look on the progress page and make sure that that's in here. I'm also going to pre-select the QNH on the PFD, or the altimeter setting as you Americans call it. And before I forget, the minimum for the approach is 480 feet, so I'm going to set that on the PFD as well. And just bringing the heading bug around there to match. So this is actually on track up view on the navigation display. So the heading bug won't be directly at the top, it'll be underneath this white triangle here. So we're in VNAV here in the cruise, and we're heading towards Sisri. And you can see the altitude restriction at Sisri is 3,400 or above. So we'll assume we've been cleared down to 3,400 and put that in the MCP. Now in VNAV path here, as this top of descent comes towards us, as we pass it, if we've got a lower altitude selected in the MCP, the aircraft will actually automatically start to descend in VNAV. So there goes the top of descent point. Here's the VNAV path information now displayed on the navigation display and the PFD. And you'll see the power starting to come back and the aircraft's initiating a descent. Clear down to an altitude now, so I've selected the QNH of 1013. And just in case Command T is doing another YouTube line check on me, here's the Vsd Display. This allows us to monitor the vertical profile and also to monitor for any terrain ahead. Also especially important for these approaches, for RNP approaches, we need to monitor progress page 4, and that allows us to monitor the Crosstrack Deviation and the vertical deviation. The cross-track must be within 0.15 nautical miles, and the vertical must be within plus or minus 75 feet. Otherwise, we must discontinue the approach. We're coming up to this decel point here, and you'll see here in the FMC there's a speed restriction of 210 knots. That's also on the plate, so the maximum speed for the procedure is 210 knots. So the aircraft's going to automatically slow down because that's coded into the legs page there. And there we go, you see the decel points disappeared, and the magenta speed bug is slowly starting to work its way back towards 210, which is maximum speed we can do after we pass the fix. We're approaching Sisri now, and the next altitude restriction is 2,300 or above at the Tango Echo 08 India. So we're going to put that in the MCP to allow the aircraft to continue the descent. The speed's just approaching the up speed there, and I'm happy to continue to decelerate to around 180 on the base. So I'm going to select flaps 1, and I'm going to match the speed to the flaps 1 maneuvering speed on the PFD. To do that, I'm going to select speed intervent and just manually wind down the knob. And you can never be too careful when you're doing that. So we're coming up to the Tango Echo 08 India point now. Start our left turn in a second. The next altitude restriction you'll see on the vertical profile here, which is the Tango Echo 08 Foxtrot, which is 2,200 feet hard altitude. You'll also find it in the legs page. So there we go, around the corner towards the final approach fix. And it's probably a good time now to select flaps 5 and slow down a little bit further. And there we go, there's the flap 5 maneuvering speed selected on the PFD there. Okay, we're now inbound on the final approach track with about 3 or so miles to go to the final approach fix. When we get to about 2 miles prior to the final approach fix, we're going to select the minimums rounded up to the nearest 100 feet on the MCP, make sure we're in VNAV path, and select speed intervent if it's not already selected. So here we are coming up to 2 miles to go to the final approach fix, and we're going to select 500 in the MCP here. VNAV path we are in, and the speed window is already open. This will allow the aircraft to continue the descent past the final approach fix. And there's the final approach fix. The altitude is correct with no flags. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and configure to save myself some time. So the gear down, the flaps can go to 15, and we'll match the speed there. There we go, and we'll take the landing checklist to flaps. So we'll take the start switches to continuous. I'm just going to put the landing lights on while I'm up here. We'll assume we've been cleared to land. Check the recall. Speed brake needs to be armed with a green light. There we go. Landing gear we check is down 3 green. Water brake we've got 3 set, that's fine. Now we can configure for flap 25. Slow the speed down to the flap 25 maneuvering speed. Make sure we're within the flap 40 safe speed, which we are. Go for flap 40. Plug the VREF plus 5 speed. There we go. And we can then complete the checklist. So we're going to check the flaps on the approach ref page. We've got 40 selected there with a green light. And the landing lights are on. So that's the landing checklist complete. And now we can continue the approach. Passing 1,000 feet, which is the white band on the PFD there. We are going to select the missed approach altitude, which is 2,500 feet on this approach. And that information can be found on the approach plate and also encoded into the legs page there. We can also use these distance markers on the approach plate here for checks for our altitude. So we just passed the 3 mile one. The altitude was 1120, so that was all good. The next point is going to be the 2 mile point, and we're expecting 800 feet on that one, so we'll check that as we pass it. And there goes 2 miles, and the altitude is 810 feet, so 10 feet high, not a big deal. There goes the 500-foot amber band, everything's nice and stable. I'm going to disengage the autopilot now and have a go at flying this thing. And just to get my excuses in early, I'm still getting used to the handling characteristics of this thing, so no judgments please. So even though it's a non-precision approach, the runway is encoded into the FMC, and the full approach profile is calculated down to the ground, so we'll get flight director guidance all the way down. We've got a very slight crosswind from the right here, and it's a little bit choppy, so the speed's going a little bit up and down, so I have to keep an eye on that as we come down the approach. Speeds come down towards VREF there is a little bit less than what I would have liked. I would have preferred a few extra knots, and we're a little bit low over the threshold there, probably about 20 feet or so. So not the best flying, but you do get what you pay for, and the video was free, so there you go.
20, 10.
So the speed breaks up, and trying to deploy the reversers. There we go, finally. And that's it. That's an RNP approach in the PMDG 737-700. Thanks for watching.